Yo, it's Hoodie Volt. Today I'm going to talk about Warren's wealth tax. I'm going to talk about what it is, I'm going to talk about how it will work, what it will achieve, and some possible other solutions to raise tax revenue that don't involve taxing individuals. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe. You got any questions or some points you'd like to bring to my attention, please leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think. So to understand this wealth tax, we'll start with what actually it will do, how they will implement it. So it'll be a tax on individuals worth more than 50 million. It'll be 2% of your total net worth per year is taxed. And then 3% if your net worth is over 1 billion. So people who are this wealthy, they don't have liquid assets, really. Jeff Bezos has approximately 5% of his assets liquid. Okay, same goes for Elon Musk. So the way that the government will get this tax revenue will be taxing their unrealized gains. Unrealized gains are gains from the stock market, public or private investments, real estate, etc. So the government, it will be required to value these assets and determine what these individuals will have to pay. So, for example, if someone owns 50 shares of a private company, the government, the IRS, will come in and value that company. Now, Elizabeth Warren has stated that if the person being taxed doesn't like the valuation, they can fork up their shares a percentage. So they need to give 3% of their shares to the government. You give your shares to the government, and the guy says supposedly the government will immediately sell those shares. But now you have the government in the private sector market messing with prices and stuff like that. I'm not a fan. So another problem with taxing unrealized gains is, especially in the current market, it's so volatile. So 1 month, Jeff Bezos' net worth could be X, and then a month later, Amazon stock tanks, he's worth 50 billion less. That's dramatic, but you get the point. So how does this tax rate, it's not consistent. You're penalizing people for getting rich. Okay, when there's so many ways that you can increase tax revenue without penalizing people for becoming successful. Okay, so the reason why she wants to implement this is because supposedly it will bring in about $3 trillion in revenue over the next 10 years. It will cost approximately $100 billion to increase the IRS's resources to actually go out and value all these assets, collect the money, etc. So I really do not think that this is the best way to increase federal tax revenue. What are some other solutions that I think you could implement to help increase federal tax revenue and decrease the tax burden on average Americans? I'll lay out 3 things. You can close tax loopholes for the wealthy. You can actually fucking tax corporations. And we can cut the absolutely massive military budget that we have in this country. So we'll start with the military budget. The United States spends more than China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, and Brazil combined. This is absolutely absurd. Okay, I get it. We want to be the strongest country, strongest military presence on the planet, and we have by far achieved that. Okay? So a proposed solution to this was offered by a former Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General David Goldfein. He suggested that if we reduce the size of many Air Force squadrons by 10 to 20%, the savings could be used for modernization, and another portion could be returned to the taxpayer. You could do this, he proposed you could do this to all key parts of the 4 military branches, since all of them have air fleets, and this could save 5 to 10% over time on the military budget. The savings per year could reach nearly $10 billion. So there's one thing to reduce the tax burden on the average American. Now, if you close tax loopholes for the rich, you have them paying their fair percentage share, okay? But if you look right now, the effective tax rate of the ultra wealthy is like 19.5%. This is absolutely so absurd that someone like me is paying a higher effective tax rate than the richest people in the world. Tax them properly on their income, and there comes more tax revenue. So I believe the most important way to increase federal tax revenue would be by properly taxing Fortune 500 companies. So if you look at their 2018 financial filings, you'll find that at least 60 of them did not pay a single penny in federal income taxes. Now, this is on a collective $79 billion in profits. So with the effective tax rate of 21% for corporations, they would have owed $16.4 billion in federal income taxes. Instead of paying any taxes, they received $4.3 billion in tax rebates. Now, this should not happen. You should not be paying the corporations to operate in this country. They receive enough money. Okay, now a lot of people make the argument that, well, if you increase taxes on corporations, the costs will pass down to the average American. But my argument is that if you look right now, you're seeing historic rise in stock buybacks. If we can increase the amount of money that these companies are paying, the first thing that we will see go is the stock buybacks. Well, you can argue that stock buybacks are good for the investor. The benefits of the government receiving the tax revenue would outweigh the benefits that the investors would see from stock buybacks, because the benefit to the average American is far greater when their effective tax rate is decreased versus their investment paying a little bit more percentage per year. So some of the ways that these companies avoid paying taxes are through their foreign subsidiaries. They use what's called offshore tax shelters. So if you can prohibit this from happening, there is a major way that you're increasing your tax revenue. They use something called accelerated depreciation on their assets, which makes absolutely no sense to me. They are allowed in current tax law to depreciate the cost of their capital faster than it actually wears out, which doesn't make any sense. They are writing off the expense of their depreciating assets faster than it's actually depreciating. It doesn't make sense. Another way that the companies get out of paying some taxes is by giving out stock options to their employees. So how this will work is when the option is exercised, the difference between what the employees pay for the stock and its current market value will be claimed as a tax deduction. Get rid of this tax deduction. No need for it. They're already having enough tax write-offs, tax deductions, ways to avoid taxes. So by increasing revenue from taxing corporations and closing tax loopholes for the ultra wealthy, and decreasing federal spending by over $10 billion per year on the military budget, you can decrease the tax burden on the average American without penalizing people for becoming rich. Because regardless of what you think, people look down upon a wealth tax because a lot of people believe that one day they will be that person who is worth $50 million. And that then that tax will affect them, so they don't like it. Okay, so I think there are many other ways that you can benefit the average American aside from penalizing people for becoming successful. And that's that.